Good morning, Australia, and welcome back to Plugged In Australia, episode 19 for February 18th, 2026. In today's headlines, Mazda prices the 6E to undercut the Tesla Model 3 while promising 560 kilometres of range. Leapmotor's B10 scores 5 stars and gets even cheaper. NIO smashes its battery swap record again. The first BMW iX3 Neue Klasse preview reaches Australia. Toyota confirms a full electric Yaris is coming. Skoda adds gaming and native Spotify to its EVs. Plus fleet advice on not waiting for perfect batteries and more. Let's get into it. Let's kick things off with NIO. NIO achieved a new single-day battery swap record of 146,649 swaps on February the 15th of 2026. This was at the peak of China's Spring Festival and Lunar New Year travel rush, just 9 days after hitting the 100 millionth cumulative swap milestone on February 6th. The company now operates more than 3,700 battery swap stations across China, with plans to add another 1,000 in 2026 and begin rolling out its 5th generation stations that will also support its Firefly sub-brand. Now, each swap takes under 3 minutes using robotic systems that exchange the entire underbody battery pack for a fully charged one, turning what is normally a 20 to 45 minute DC fast charge stop into a drive-in, drive-out experience comparable to putting fuel in a car, petrol car. The technology is built into NIO's platform from the ground up. Vehicles are engineered with standardized battery interfaces, and customers can choose battery as a service, where they pay a monthly subscription for the pack rather than owning it outright. This lowers the upfront purchase price by about 20 to 30%, depending on pack size, and allows seamless upgrades to higher capacity or newer chemistry batteries later without buying a new car. NIO offers 75, 100, 120 and 150 kilowatt hour packs on its premium models, while Firefly uses a smaller 42.1 kilowatt hour LFP pack. During the February 15 peak, the network handled the equivalent of swapping batteries for more than 146,000 vehicles in 24 hours, proving reliability under extreme utilization. Now, for Australia, NIO has confirmed a 2026 launch with the Firefly small hatchback targeted at the BYD Dolphin, the MG4, and those are the small Mazda 2 sized cars coming into the market. The Australian Firefly will use a fixed 42 kilowatt hour LFP battery, delivering up to 330 kilometers of WLTP range and approximately 29 minute 10 to 80% DC charging on a CCS2 port. Now, it will not support battery swapping at launch. The reasons are both practical and geographic. Australia currently has no battery swap infrastructure whatsoever. Building even a basic network of robotic stations would cost hundreds of millions and require brand standardized battery packs, something that does not yet exist across manufacturers. Australia's population density is concentrated in a handful of coastal cities, but our landmass is vast, with long highway corridors and remote regional routes where a dense swap network just simply does not make economic sense. That said, the Chinese success story still matters here. For urban fleet operators or families doing regular Sydney to Melbourne or Brisbane to Gold Coast runs, the 3-minute swap experience eliminates the quote-unquote range anxiety tax of planning 30 to 45 minute charging stops, especially in 35 to 40 degree summer heat, where preconditioning and cabin cooling can reduce effective range by 15 to 20%. So imagine leaving Sydney, 6 o'clock in the morning, swapping once near Goulburn, and then again near Albury, and arriving in Melbourne before lunch without ever plugging in. In contrast, even the best 350 kilowatt chargers on the Hume Highway today can take 25 to 35 minutes for a 10 to 80% top up on a similar sized battery, while you wait in the heat or the rain. NIO's Australian strategy therefore focuses on conventional charging for the Firefly, while the brand monitors local demand and potential government or consortium-backed swapping. The Firefly will compete on price. We're expecting low to mid $40,000 drive-away range, your build quality, features, and the brand's proven engineering depth. NIO's global expansion into right-hand drive markets, Australia and New Zealand confirmed for second half of 2026, it really shows serious commitment. Right-hand drive Firefly production is already underway and prototypes have been spotted testing in Victoria. Now, realistically, battery swapping is unlikely to become widespread in Australia before the early 2030s unless a major player commits capital to highway corridors and urban hubs. The economics are challenging. Each station costs several $100,000, requires grid upgrades, needs high utilization to pay back. But NIO's record numbers prove that where the infrastructure exists, user experience is transformative, especially for high mileage drivers of fleets. For private buyers considering the Firefly in 2026, the absence of swapping is not a real deal breaker. The car will still offer really competitive range, fast charging, and lower running costs than petrol equivalents. The broader lesson for Australia is that rapid energy replenishment is solvable. It puts healthy pressure on the existing charging network, currently more than 1,270 public fast charging sites, but it's still very patchy in regional areas. To keep improving speed, reliability, and pricing transparency, NIO's arrival adds another credible option in the small EV segment and signals that Chinese innovation in solving real pain points is accelerating. Australian EV sales in January 2026 reached approximately 7,400 battery electric vehicles, or about 8.4% market share, with Chinese brands driving the majority of growth. The Firefly will be watched closely. If it delivers on quality and service, it could accelerate the shift and eventually open the door for swap-capable higher-end NIO models once the infrastructure catches up. In the meantime, the 146,000-day swap day is a powerful demonstration that EV refueling can be faster than petrol for those with access to the right system. For Aussie drivers still on the fence about range anxiety on long trips, it shows the technology exists and is proven at massive scale. The Firefly's fixed battery approach keeps it simple and affordable for our market conditions, while the brand's swap expertise gives confidence in long-term battery health and upgradability. Definitely a different perspective on that one there. I really do think that it's an interesting story and it's something to keep in mind, but charging with a regular plug is definitely more than sufficient for Australia. Yes, we do need many more charging stations, larger charging stations, better uptimes, and all that sort of stuff that we all know. However, I don't think that battery swapping and the cost that it would be to install all of that really would give us value for money, and it's much better that someone like NIO and Stellantis would invest in more charging infrastructure rather than that sort of thing. Mazda has opened pre-orders for the 2026 Mazda 6e, its first mainstream battery electric vehicle in Australia. Pricing is set at $49,990 MLP, which is your manufacturer's list price, that's before all the on-road costs, for the base GT rear-wheel drive model, and $52,990 MLP for the higher spec Atenza. Deliveries are slated to begin in July of this year. This positions the 6e GT almost $5,000 below the current Tesla Model 3 premium rear-wheel drive pricing, which is $54,900 before on roads, and directly competitive with the BYD Seal Dynamic at $46,990 before on roads. Now, both variants share the same powertrain, a rear-mounted permanent magnet motor producing 190 kilowatts and 290 newton meters of torque, paired with a 78 kilowatt hour LFP battery. WLTP range is rated at up to 560 kilometers, with a combined consumption of 15.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which isn't too bad. DC fast charging, 30 to 80%, can be completed in a little as 15 minutes. Geez, I tell you what, that 30 to 80%, I don't like that. What are you hiding? Just do 10 to 80. Can't be that bad. Anyway, that's on a suitable charger. Independent testing has recorded 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 7.35 seconds. Comfortable for a comfort-orientated mid-size liftback rather than a performance wagon. The 6E is built on the EPA1 platform, developed jointly with Chang'an Mazda in China and assembled there. Its dimensions are 4,921mm long, 1,890mm wide, 1,485mm tall on a 2,895mm wheelbase. Whew, got to be accurate with these dimensions. It's notably larger than the previous internal combustion Mazda 6, giving generous 5-seat space and a practical hatchback tailgate. The design retains Mazda's signature Kodo styling with low coupe-like roofline and a short rear deck. Standard equipment on the GT is extensive for the price. You're getting a 10.2-inch digital instrument cluster, 14.6-inch central touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, 19-inch alloys, 360-degree camera, augmented reality heads-up display, tri-zone climate control, heated and ventilated front seats, 14-speaker Sony audio, a 64-color ambient lighting, and your full ADAS suite, including things like blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, and cyclist detection. The Atenza adds quilted tan leather and synthetic suede seating, matching dashboard and door trims, and a two-tone steering wheel. A $1,000 warm beige interior upgrade is also available on the GT. The first 300 GT pre-order customers will receive a free upgrade to full Atenza specification. It's a pretty decent incentive. Additional features include Mazda's first Bluetooth digital key in Australia. I hope they get that right. I know Tesla do a good job. The Shark 6, the BYD Shark 6 has been having a few dramas with that. Anyway, and a smartphone will have a smartphone app for remote preconditioning to control doors and windows and give you vehicle status. There will be 7 exterior colors offered, including the signature Soul Red Metallic and Machine Grey Metallic as well. Head-to-head, the 6E GT undercuts the Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive on price, while offering a larger 78 kilowatt-hour battery versus the Model 3's approximately 60 kilowatt-hour usable in the base rear-wheel drive, translating to the class-leading 560 kilometers WLTP range. Real-world Australian mixed conditions is probably going to be more like 450 to 500 kilometers, maybe even a bit less on the highway if you're running the AC, which you probably are at this time of the year. The Model 3 has more power, 208 kilowatt, and quicker acceleration, but the 6E prioritizes ride comfort and interior refinement, classic Mazda DNA. And in all honesty, yes, okay, the acceleration is nice for your, party trick, but really day to day, you're just not going to use that. Versus the BYD Seal Dynamic, which is 150 kilowatt and a 460 to 570 kilometer range, depending on the variant. The 6E brings a more premium interior execution, larger boot, thanks to the liftback, and Mazda's renowned chassis tuning for Australian roads. For Aussie buyers, this is a genuine mainstream Japanese brand EV option in a segment dominated by Tesla and Chinese volume players. The LFP battery brings cost, safety, and longevity advantages, and while Mazda has yet to confirm servicing and battery warranty, expect an 8 to 10 year, 160,000 kilometer warranty, and you really will have minimal degradation over that period. Though it is heavier than some NMC packs, so that's something to keep in mind. Real-world considerations include no initial all-wheel drive or high-performance variant, Chinese assembly, a factor for some brand-conscious buyers in so much as that you're buying a Japanese brand, you're expecting it to be built in Japan, and service through Mazda's established dealer network, a real strength versus newer Chinese brands still scaling service points. 5-year total cost of ownership for a typical Sydney or Melbourne driver doing 15,000 kilometres per year looks pretty compelling. At an average electricity rate of 28 cents per kilowatt hour, the 6E costs roughly 4.5 to 5 cents per kilometre versus 18 to 22 cents per kilometre for a comparable petrol mid-size sedan. And obviously you can bring that cost down significantly if you have solar, or if you're able to charge on periods where you get a cheaper rate. Maintenance is significantly lower. You're going to have no oil changes, fewer brake jobs, and if anything, the brake jobs are going to be because you don't use the brakes much, so you've got to make sure you do use them every now and again. You also might have some federal and state incentives, potential stamp duty savings in some states that may further narrow the gap. If they're there, you might as well use them. Resale projections are positive, given Mazda's strong brand and the growing used EV market. Some potential drawbacks, bit of honesty here, real-world highway range in 35-degree plus summer with 2 adults, luggage, the aircon cranking, will probably drop your range to around 400 kilometres, requiring a little bit of pre-planning, maybe 1 or 2 stops if you're going on a very large trip, Sydney to Brisbane. But as I've said before, my blood, I can't last Sydney to Brisbane, which we have done in the EV5. We went Sydney to the Gold Coast. So I speak from experience. Charging infrastructure on major routes is now adequate for most, but if you're going inland, regional gaps, they do remain. The car is not the fastest or the most tech savvy, but it is balanced, comfortable, and premium feeling, and it is exactly what many Mazda loyalists want when switching from maybe a previous Mazda 6. The aggressive pricing and first 300 upgrade offer shows Mazda is serious about volume in a segment where the Model 3 still leads, but it really does face increasing pressure. Combined with the upcoming CX-6E SUV, on the same platform, which we expect later this year in 2026, Mazda is building a credible EV lineup that respects its heritage while delivering the efficiency and low running costs Aussie buyers increasingly demand. Leapmotor's B10 small electric SUV has achieved a full 5-star ANCAP safety rating under the 2023 to 2025 protocol, applying to all variants sold in Australia. Child occupant protection scored 95%, with strong adult occupant and safety assist results. The rating is a major credibility boost for the Stellantis-backed brand in a market where safety remains a key concern for some buyers evaluating newer Chinese names. Current pricing starts at $38,990 drive away for the base EV style, making it one of Australia's cheapest electric SUVs and undercutting the MG S5 EV, which is at $40,490 drive away. An extended range electric vehicle, aka EREV variant, with a small petrol range extender is confirmed for October 2026 arrival and is expected to price from under $37,000 drive away, following the C10 precedent where EREV versions undercut pure EV equivalents by around $2,000. Although I reckon you might make a good chunk of that up in additional servicing costs, but another story for another day. The B10 uses rear-wheel drive with 160 kilowatt and 240 newton meters in base form on an LFP battery, delivering refined dynamics with near 50-50 weight distribution. Leapmotor and Stellantis executives have emphasized the most, quote, European feel among Chinese SUVs, crediting joint chassis development, minimal body roll, planted handling, and sophisticated damping. Senior Product Manager Rick Crichton noted the rear-wheel drive layout and balance differentiate it from many front-drive rivals in the small SUV class. The even smaller Leapmotor B03X, which is called the A10 in China, is under active study for Australian launch. Expected dimensions are approximately 4.2 metres long and a wheelbase of over 2.6 metres, smaller than a BYD Atto 2. This has a projected range of around 425 kilometres WLTP, equivalent on high-density LFP. Features for this could include LiDAR-based ADAS with door-to-door autonomy potential, AI cockpit, there's our buzzword for the year, and over-the-air updates. Pricing in the low 30,000s drive away would position it as Leapmotor's entry-level model against the Atto 2 and make the brand a full-spectrum small EV player. The C10 mid-size last year, the B10 now, the B03X potentially soon, really highlights Stellantis' backed agility. The 5-star ANCAP directly addresses lingering perceptions around newer Chinese brands, combined with aggressive pricing and the upcoming e-Rev option for buyers still wary of pure EV range in regional Australia. The B10 is highly attractive for both private buyers and cost-sensitive fleets. Real-world Australian considerations include your expanding service network, leveraging Stellantis' Jeep and Peugeot dealers, parts availability, and building long-term battery warranty confidence. The rear-wheel drive, quote, European feel claim will be tested on local roads, but the engineering focus is genuine and sets it apart from many front-drive competitors. Leapmotor's expansion demonstrates that Chinese EVs are moving beyond price to rapid iteration, safety compliance, and feature density, forcing traditional players to respond with better value for Australian buyers. Choice at multiple price points, honestly, it's never been stronger. The very first right-hand drive example of the all-new 2026 BMW iX3 Neue Klasse has landed on Australian soil for customer preview events and dealer familiarisation sessions, making the official countdown to local deliveries that will begin in mid-2026. Production of the vehicle is scheduled to commence in March of 26 at BMW's dedicated Neue Klasse manufacturing facilities, and the brand has already opened interest registrations for us Australian customers, while the final pricing and full specifications are still being finalised for our market. No incremental update here. The iX3 Neue Klasse sits on BMW's completely new electric-only platform that the company has described as the biggest architectural leap since the original Neue Klasse sedans of the 1960s that helped rescue the brand from near bankruptcy. The platform has been engineered from the ground up for superior range, dramatically faster charging, vastly improved thermal management, higher structural rigidity, and a significant technology step forward in both hardware and software. The preview vehicle in Australia is the iX3 50 xDrive specification, dual electric motors on the front and rear axles, delivering a combined 345 kilowatts of power and 675 newton meters of torque. Now that is enough for a 0 to 100 km/h sprint in around 4.9 seconds and an electronically limited top speed of 210 kilometers an hour. Underneath sits a 100 kilowatt-hour usable high-voltage battery pack using advanced cell chemistry that BMW has developed in-house with its battery partners. On the European WLTP cycle, the vehicle is rated for up to 805 kilometers of range. That is a staggering 75% improvement over the outgoing iX3's 460 kilometer figure. For Australian conditions, the real-world numbers will naturally be lower, but still class-leading. We expect somewhere around 600 to 680 kilometers in sort of your mild season, spring and autumn, with mixed driving, and probably closer to 550 to 600 in those real hot 35 plus summer days. That's running with sort of 2 adults, luggage, some climate control going pretty flat out. That is still enough to comfortably do Sydney to Melbourne with a single 20-minute charge stop instead of 2 or even 3 stops required on the previous model. The 800-volt architecture allows 10 to 80% charging in just 21 minutes. You're listening, Mazda? On a suitably powerful DC fast charger. Again, a massive step up from the previous iX3's 400-volt system. The Neue Klasse platform brings several technological advances that directly benefit Australian drivers. We got improved thermal management, which means the battery maintains peak performance and charging speed even after repeated fast charges on a long haul up the Hume or the Pacific Highway. Regen braking has been refined for stronger one-pedal feel without feeling jerky, which is particularly useful in your stop-start Sydney, Melbourne, wherever you live, traffic. Gotta love bumper to bumper. or even when you're descending down the Great Dividing Range. The xDrive all-wheel drive system provides excellent traction in wet conditions on your south coast, or if you're out in the snowy high country areas during winter. BMW has confirmed it will launch at least 6 Neue Klasse models worldwide within the first 24 months of production, showing this is not a token effort but a full commitment to electrification. For Australia, the iX3 will be the first, followed closely by other derivatives. Now, pricing still under wraps. However, industry expectation is a drive-away figure starting north of $110,000 for the 50 xDrive, positioning it against the Model Y long range, which is still considerably cheaper, the Audi Q6 e-tron, the Mercedes EQE SUV, and, at a stretch, your Zeekr 7X, not in terms of price, but definitely in terms of the quality and the spec, because the Zeekr is obviously significantly cheaper. The BMW will cost more. However, BMW expects buyers will pay more for the brand cachet, its superior ride, and handling calibration that has been tuned on Australian roads in previous models. A far more premium interior with higher grade materials and BMW's legendary dealer network and servicing experience. Comparing this with the outgoing iX3, the new model is longer, wider, and has significantly more aerodynamic shape with active grille shutters, optimized underbody panels, and flush door handles, for now anyway. Boot space is increased thanks to the skateboard platform, and rear legroom is class leading for a mid-size premium SUV. The interior features BMW's latest curved display, running the newest iDrive operating system with dramatically faster processing power, some improved voice control, and over-the-air update capability that will keep the vehicle fresh for years to come. For Aussie buyers who've been holding off on a premium EV because of range anxiety on our vast highway network, this iX3 changes the equation. A family can now realistically do Brisbane to Cairns with sensible overnight stops and still enjoy the BMW driving dynamics that many loyal customers just refuse to give up. Fleet managers in corporate or government sectors will appreciate the lower whole of life costs once the higher purchase price is offset by electricity savings, minimal maintenance, and strong residual values that BMW has historically delivered better than most, which is what I understand. I know in New South Wales we have a lot of highway patrol BMWs, and that was one of the top determining factors. Obviously operational needs, but high residual value is one of the big key reasons why the New South Wales Police went with the BMWs. Realistically, there are still trade-offs. At the expected price, it will not be a volume setter like your Model Y, but it does not need to be. BMW's strategy is to use the Neue Klasse to reclaim the technological high ground and protect margins in the premium segment. Charging infrastructure on major routes is now good enough that a 20-minute top-up is very practical and very realistic. However, inland regional travel, as I've said before, will still require some planning. This vehicle is heavier than some Chinese rivals due to its substantially large battery and its robust construction, which slightly affects efficiency in city driving, but the extra mass is managed well by the sophisticated suspension. So overall, the arrival of this preview car signals that the legacy German brands have closed the range and charging gap that Chinese manufacturers exploited so successfully for the past couple of years. For the Aussie EV market, this is healthy competition. It forces everyone to lift their game on quality, refinement, and real-world usability. BMW customers who have been waiting for a genuine long-range electric SUV that still feels like a Beamer now have one on the horizon. Toyota has officially confirmed that the next generation Yaris, slated for global reveal and launch around 2027-28, will be available with 3 distinct powertrain families: pure petrol, hybrid, and full battery electric. Hooray! All built on a single flexible new platform. This is the same multi-energy approach Toyota is applying to the upcoming Corolla, which we mentioned in a previous episode, and it allows the company to offer the right powertrain for each market without creating entirely separate models or nameplates. The full battery electric Yaris is expected to target a competitive WLTP range of around 400 kilometers, putting it directly in the firing line of small city EVs such as the Renault 5, the upcoming ID Polo-sized model, the MG4, BYD Dolphin, and the Leapmotor B03X. I appreciate some of those models are not yet available here in Australia, but they are on the cards. Toyota has not released battery size or power figures yet, but the target range suggests a 50 to 60 kilowatt hour pack with highly efficient motors and lightweight construction to keep the car affordable and nimble. The hybrid version, which you don't want, will build on the current Yaris hybrid's excellent real-world efficiency of around 3.3 litres per 100 kilometres combined, with further improvements expected from the new platform's aerodynamics and lighter materials. The pure petrol variant will remain for markets where EV or hybrid infrastructure is still developing or where buyers simply prefer the lowest upfront cost. Styling will move to a sharper, more contemporary Toyota design language with slimmer LED lighting signatures, a more planted stance, and a slightly larger overall footprint that gives the small hatch a more substantial road presence. I do notice, just to digress for a moment, manufacturers, like every iteration, these cars seem to get bigger. The whole point was for it to be a small car. I don't understand. Anyway, Toyota Europe's Vice President of Strategy and Marketing, Andrea Carlucci, stated that electrification is inevitable for the Yaris, but not at the expense of hybrid technology. Oh, God forbid, we don't want to muck up with the hybrid technology. Underscoring the brand's belief that a one-size-fits-all EV push is not right for every customer or every country. For Australia, this announcement is pretty significant, I think. The current Yaris is sold exclusively as a hybrid and has been a strong performer in the light hatch segment, particularly with younger buyers and families who value the low running costs and the quote-unquote Toyota reliability without the perceived range concerns of a pure EV. Adding a full EV option gives Toyota a direct answer to the wave of sub $45,000 Chinese and European small EVs that are flooding the market. Pricing for the EV Yaris is likely to land in the low to mid $40,000 drive away, making it reasonably accessible to first-time buyers and fleet operators. The flexible platform reduces development costs dramatically and allows Toyota to adapt quickly to tightening new vehicle efficiency standards, which is the NVES. By 2027/2028, the NVES will be applying increasing pressure on manufacturers to lower fleet average CO2, and having petrol, hybrid, and EV variants of the same model gives Toyota maximum flexibility to balance its portfolio without having to pull out of the small car segment entirely, something that happened to many brands in the past. Potential performance variants are also on the table. Toyota's Gazoo Racing division is developing new turbocharged engines for future hot hatch models, and a GR Yaris successor remains possible, although it's not yet confirmed whether the EV version will get a high-performance derivative. Tell you what, it'll blow the socks off any turbo. You got no turbo lag, you just got bang, you're out of there. Australian buyers who are still nervous about pure EV ownership will have the hybrid as a more familiar stepping stone, while those ready for full electric get a Toyota badge, its legendary build quality, strong resale values, and an extensive dealer network that stretches into regional towns where many Chinese brands still have limited presence. I got to say, Toyota has a very good dealer presence. The 400-kilometer range target is realistic for daily commuting and weekend getaways. Realistically, the EV Yaris will not match the 560 kilometers of the larger Mazda 6e or the 500 plus kilometers of some Chinese small SUVs, but it doesn't need to. It's a city-focused small hatch. It's not your Sydney to Melbourne car. Not to say that it couldn't do it, but it's not what it's made for. Efficiency, low weight, and affordability will be its key strengths. Toyota's cautious multi-pathway strategy has drawn criticism from pure EV advocates. However, the Gumtree survey, which we will cover later, shows more than 50% of Australian new car intenders are still considering hybrids first. Toyota is simply reading the market correctly and positioning itself to capture buyers at every stage of the electrification journey. This approach also protects the company's huge investment in hybrid technology while preparing for the day when solid-state batteries or even cheaper LFP packs make 500 to 600 kilometre small EVs the norm. For Australian drivers, the next Yaris means choice. You can stay with the hybrid you know and love, or go the full EV, which you should. That flexibility is exactly what many Australians have been asking for. People want to be able to choose what's best for them and not be forced into a decision by government or anybody else for that matter. And Toyota's reading that sentiment and making those adjustments in their product lines to suit. The latest The Influence Engine national survey from the Gumtree Group, which includes Cars Guide, Gumtree Cars and Auto Trader, has delivered the clearest picture yet of where Australian new car buyers' heads are at in the early 2026. More than half of all new car intenders are now actively considering a hybrid or plug-in hybrid as their next vehicle, making hybrids the fastest growing propulsion preference by a very clear margin. Pure battery electric consideration sits at approximately 1 in 3 intenders. The survey describes Australians as cautious pragmatists who want the triple benefit of lower running costs, environmental improvement and modern technology, but who are unequally unwilling to sacrifice convenience, familiarity, or the ability to drive long distance without detailed planning. Yes, we must be able to jump in the car and drive across the Nullarbor and drive for 10 hours straight. Very, very realistic. Hybrids and plug-in hybrids are seen as the perfect middle ground that delivers immediate savings and lower emissions today while the charging network and battery technology continue to mature. Major barriers to full EV adoption remain exactly as they have for the past 2 years. Higher upfront purchase price, even after incentives, range anxiety on longer trips, and inconsistent public charging infrastructure, especially once you leave the capital cities or you head inland into regional or remote Australia. These concerns, they're not imagined, they are the lived experience of many drivers who regularly travel between Sydney and regional New South Wales, Melbourne and country Victoria, or Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. The report is clear that hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and even lower emission petrol models will act as critical stepping stones through the late 2020s and into the early 2030s before pure EVs become the dominant choice for the majority. This is not a setback for electrification. It is the realistic pathway that matches Australian geography, driving patterns, and infrastructure rollout speed. For the EV positive movement, this data is actually encouraging when read correctly. It shows that openness to any form of electrification is now mainstream. Over 80% of intenders are considering something other than a pure petrol or diesel car. So the near-term growth in hybrids is creating millions of drivers who are already comfortable with electric motors, regenerative braking, lower servicing costs, and the quiet, smooth driving experience. When those drivers are ready to go full EV in 2028 to 2030, they will already understand the technology and the transition will be far more easy. The survey also carries important messages for manufacturers and governments. OEMs must move beyond, quote, technological evangelism and start showing how their vehicles fit real Australian lifestyles. Family holidays, weekend caravanning, tradie work, regional commuting, pricing transparency, honest range figures under Australian conditions, and clear total cost of ownership calculators will build the trust and is certainly missing for many. Policy-wise, the new vehicle efficiency standard is already doing its job by forcing more low-emission models into showrooms. but the survey suggests the transition will still be gradual rather than revolutionary. That is exactly the balanced pace Australia needs to avoid the infrastructure bottlenecks and second-hand market shocks that have hit some European countries. For everyday Australian drivers, the takeaway is simple and positive. You are not behind the curve if you choose a hybrid today. You are part of the bridge that will make full EV ownership normal and unremarkable in the 2030s. The data proves the market is moving in the right direction, just at a speed that matches our unique conditions rather than someone else's timeline. Tesla's long-promised Apple CarPlay support has hit yet another delay, this time caused by a software incompatibility between Tesla's in-house mapping system, that one that's used for autopilot and full self-driving supervised, and Apple Maps. If both systems ran simultaneously, they could give the driver conflicting directions, creating a potential safety issue when autopilot or FSD is active. Apple has already fixed the bug in iOS 26, but the slower than adoption of that iOS version has forced Tesla to hold back the rollout until enough customers are on the compatible software. Apple's latest figures show that 74% of iPhones from the previous 4 years have now updated to iOS 26, an improvement from earlier weeks, but still below the adoption rates seen for previous major iOS releases at the same point in their cycle. Tesla had originally targeted a late 2025 rollout, however pulled back when it became clear that not enough customers had the updated maps installed. The integration will appear as a native app within Tesla's existing software interface rather than the full CarPlay Ultra experience. For Aussie Tesla owners, this means continuing to rely on the native Tesla interface, Bluetooth audio streaming, or phone mirroring workarounds for the foreseeable future. No new rollout date has been confirmed, and there is still zero information on Android Auto support. The delay is particularly frustrating for the large number of Australian buyers who have cited lack of CarPlay as a reason they would not consider a Tesla. Independent surveys regularly show that around 1/3 of new car intenders would rule out any vehicle without Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. The significance goes beyond convenience. Many owners use CarPlay for its superior navigation, seamless integration with Apple Music and podcasts, and the ability to keep using familiar apps while the car handles the driving. With full self-driving supervised now active in Australia, the mapping conflict was a legitimate safety concern that Tesla was right to address before pushing the feature live. We all know Tesla's got its haters and they would just jump all over this. Realistically, it's not a permanent roadblock. It is a complex software integration issue that involves safety-critical systems. Tesla has never supported third-party mirroring before, so getting it right first time is important. For owners who cannot wait, the native Tesla system is still highly capable with excellent voice commands, over-the-air navigation updates, and integration with the vehicle's cameras and sensors. But for many drivers who live in the Apple ecosystem, the delay is a genuine pain point. The good news is that CarPlay, it's still coming. And once it does roll out, it will be available via an over-the-air update to existing vehicles. Aussie Tesla drivers just need to be patient a little longer with Apple's iOS 26 adoption continues to climb and Tesla completes final validation. So you know what that means. If you are a Tesla owner and you have iOS 26, you need to upgrade it. In actual fact, if you know anybody who has an Apple device and hasn't upgraded, you need to tell them to upgrade too, because they're working off statistics of all iOS users. I know it can be a little bit frustrating. My wife was very hesitant to update. She didn't want to change anything, but it's if you want to get Apple CarPlay into your Tesla, you need to make it happen. Fleet operators who are sitting on the sidelines waiting for the next generation of batteries to arrive are being told they could end up paying more overall and falling behind their competitors. This is according to speakers at a recent Australasian Fleet Management Association webinar. The core message was simple but powerful. Battery technology will keep improving, but waiting creates a never-ending cycle of deferral while other fleets gain valuable real-world data optimize charging strategies, and lock in government incentives that may not be available later. Jet Charger's Director of Major Projects, Alex Bowler, put it bluntly, quote, "If you wait, you're going to benefit from more industry experience, better technology, lower costs. But you also need to consider what the benefit is of transitioning some or part of your fleet sooner," end quote. Movement founder and director Mark Jurgic added that EVs already have significantly lower variable costs, mainly electricity versus diesel. However, higher fixed capital costs. So the key is to minimize the fixed cost impact and maximize the variable savings through smart deployment. Arena's Director of Zero Emission Vehicle Strategy Implementation, that's one heck of a title, Alex Grant, reminded fleets that grant funding is designed to help early adopters take on the technical and commercial risk to prove the business case. Those funds are competitive and time limited, so waiting means missing them. The webinar stressed that charging strategy and electricity cost control are far more important than waiting for an extra 50 to 100 kilometers of range. Fleets that start small now learn about their actual duty cycles, dwell times, payload effects on range, and the best mix of overnight depot charging versus opportunity charging during the day. That knowledge is invaluable when scaling up later. Doing nothing is not a neutral decision. It means zero progress on customer emissions targets, no internal capability building, and the risk of playing catch up when regulatory pressure or client demands eventually force the issue. Staggered replacement programs allow fleets to introduce EVs now, gain experience, and then add newer vehicles with better batteries in future cycles without being locked into obsolete technology. For Aussie fleets, whether urban delivery vans in Sydney or Melbourne, mining support vehicles in the Pilbara, or government fleets in regional areas, the total cost of ownership advantage of EVs is already real on many routes. Electricity at off-peak rates plus regenerative braking that significantly reduces brake wear and sometimes even shortens trip times on hilly routes can deliver payback periods of 3 to 5 years depending on annual kilometres. So the advice is clear. Start with a pilot of 5 to 10 vehicles on well understood routes, measure everything, optimize charging, and build the internal knowledge that will make full electrification successful when the time is right. Waiting for perfection is the most expensive option of all. Behind closed doors, a number of established car makers and the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries are resisting moves to close a controversial loophole in the new vehicle efficiency standard that allows low-emission vehicles to be counted for compliance as soon as they arrive in Australia rather than when they are sold to customers. The loophole effectively lets importers stockpile EVs and hybrids at the wharf or in warehouses to, quote, bank credits that can offset sales of higher emission vehicles later. Tesla and the Electric Vehicle Council have been vocal in calling for a switch to point-of-sale counting to improve transparency and stop what they describe as gaming of the system. While I was researching this story, I had no idea that they were done when they were imported. I just assumed they were done at point of sale because that makes the most sense. Dealer groups have also expressed support for point of sale because it would give them more predictable supply. The federal government has so far delayed any change until at least the 2026 review, citing a lack of industry consensus and concerns that closing the loophole could add short-term costs or disrupt supply chains that manufacturers have already built around the current rules. So let's not change the rules, because otherwise we'll catch out those that are gaming the system and they'll be disadvantaged. Yeah, good, makes sense. Critics argue the loophole encourages dumping of excess stock that can distort new car pricing and damage residual values for early buyers. Straight from the dock to the auctions. Not a good way to do it. Supporters say it provides necessary flexibility in a market where global supply chains and shipping schedules can be unpredictable. Now, for consumers, the outcome on this, it really matters. Greater transparency would make it easier to understand true EV availability and pricing stability, while keeping the loophole maintains flexibility for manufacturers, risks less accurate national emissions counting. This debate shows just how complex effective policy is in a fast-moving global industry. Whatever the government eventually decides will directly influence how quickly and affordably EVs reach Australian driveways over the next 5 years. Skoda has significantly upgraded the infotainment experience in its Enyaq and the new Elroq electric models with software version 4.0 and above. Owners now get Air Console gaming with more than 15 titles, including an exclusive Tetris version. Skoda Play video streaming featuring news and educational content from Euronews, CNN and others, and native Spotify integration, all included in the media streaming package at no extra cost for the first 3 years. The gaming and video features are available only when the vehicle is safely parked and stationary, turning charging stops or family road trips into entertainment time. Spotify streams directly over the car's built-in data connection without needing a phone. Now, while these features are rolling out first in Europe, they are part of Skoda's global software strategy for its MEB platform EVs and are highly likely to reach Australian Enyaq and Elroq owners through over-the-air updates once the local models receive the same software branch. For Australian families, this adds real genuine value. Kids can play games during a charge stop at a highway stop, or adults can catch up on the news while waiting. This trend of EVs becoming mobile digital entertainment hubs is accelerating and improves the ownership experience in ways that traditional ICE vehicles simply cannot match. BYD's control of the entire supply chain, batteries, semiconductors, motors, assembly, and even the shipping, allows order to delivery times that are dramatically shorter than most competitors. In a market now flooded with new EV models from every direction, this execution speed has helped BYD climb to 6th place in January 2026's national sales figures with a massive year-on-year growth. The premium Denza sub-brand is also scaling quickly and has publicly forecast up to 10,000 sales in 2026 after strong early results with the B5 and B8 models. Even when pricing and specifications are similar to rivals, the ability to get cars into customers' hands weeks or months faster is proving to be a decisive advantage. In Australia's competitive landscape, supply chain mastery and customer experience are now as important as the vehicles themselves. All right, now for something a little bit different. Former Holden marketing executive Mark Harland, who is now COO of BYD's premium Denza brand in Australia, has revealed that when Holden explored the possibility of Chinese imports several years ago, the idea was dismissed almost instantly with the comment, quote, "People in Australia will never drive Chinese cars," unquote. That entrenched attitude contributed to Holden's eventual inability to adapt and its ultimate demise. In February 2026, the reality is unrecognizable. BYD sits comfortably inside the national top 10 brands. China is the second largest vehicle exporter to Australia, behind only Japan, and Chinese EVs are responsible for the majority of volume growth in the electric segment. Denza is making genuine inroads into the premium space that was once the exclusive domain of German and Japanese marquees. The shift has been driven by measurable improvements in build quality, aggressive but transparent pricing, industry-leading warranties, and real-world performance that has won over critics. Models like the Atto 3, Seal, Sea-Lion 7, and Shark 6 have proven durable in Australian conditions. The Holden story stands as a cautionary tale of understanding how quickly consumer perceptions can change when value, technology, and quality align. For today's Aussie buyers, the origin of the car matters far less than how well it meets their needs, and in the EV space, Chinese brands are currently meeting those needs better than many expected. Horizon Minerals has successfully raised $175 million through a placement, plus a further $10 million share purchase plan, to refurbish and repurpose the former Black Swan nickel processing plant near Kalgoorlie into a 2.2 million tonnes per annum gold processing facility, targeting 100,000 ounces of gold production per year. Construction is scheduled to start mid-2026, while commissioning targeted for mid-2027. While the project is focused on gold, its location in Western Australia's Goldfield region is highly relevant to the EV transition. Because I know you were thinking that, what the heck does this have to do with the price of fish? The Goldfields is one of Australia's richest critical mineral provinces, producing nickel, lithium, cobalt, and other metals that are essential feedstocks for EV battery manufacturing. Strengthening local processing capability in this region helps secure Australia's role in the global EV supply chain and builds economic resilience in the very areas that will supply the raw materials for the batteries in the vehicles we are discussing every day. So you've got to just see it from all different angles. Let's keep going. Some more data. The latest analysis from Endgame Analytics on decarbonising Australia's transport sector underlines that rapid passenger EV growth must be matched by equally serious work on heavy vehicle electrification, grid capacity upgrades, vehicle-to-grid technology, scale charging infrastructure, and coherent policy. Passenger EVs are already delivering 65 to 100% lower cost per kilometre, depending on charging method, and second life battery opportunities plus renewable energy pairing offer additional economic and environmental wins. However, heavy vehicles, only 4% of the fleet, but 38% of transport emissions, and truly regional routes remain the hardest nut to crack. The report stresses the need for integrated planning that treats EVs not as isolated vehicles, but as part of a smarter, more flexible energy system. Australia has the opportunity to lead if it balances speed of adoption with infrastructure readiness and avoids the bottlenecks that have slowed progress elsewhere. For everyday drivers and fleets, the message is positive. The cost savings and environmental benefits are real and growing, and the infrastructure is catching up faster than many expected. And that's our episode for today, February 19th, 2026. This is definitely our longest podcast. Just a little bit of a tidbit, as I was unable to record an episode yesterday. I sat down late yesterday evening and was like, right, time to have a look at this and see what we're going to do. And I was just bombarded with all of the information and all of the news articles and just all of the releases. There's just so much there. So as you can see, I would have cut this into two 30-minute podcasts, which is usually the aim, but I just don't want you guys to miss out on any news. I want to make sure that I include everything and I don't exclude anything. And as you can see, I'm giving various different perspectives, different points of view, things like battery swapping, things like the premium end of the market, the cheaper end of the market. I think it's very, very important that we don't just make this a one-sided affair, that we give different points of view. Now, I personally don't agree in swapping, battery swapping. I don't think it's necessary. However, some may, and it might be important, might be interesting to other people. So we make sure we include it. I might give my 2 cents worth. However, at the end of the day, you're all smart, you're all educated, you can all make your own decisions. I just hope that I can give you some of the information, or at the very least, a quick rundown of some of the news and some of the stories, and you might decide, you know what, I like battery swapping. I think it's fantastic. I'm going to spend some more time delving deeper into that world. I want to learn a little bit more. Anyway, I really appreciate you joining us here. If you have any feedback whatsoever, info@pluggedinaustralia.com.au. Over the last few episodes, we've been gaining some more traction, getting some more listeners, and I honestly really appreciate it. If this is the first episode you've listened to, it's definitely a long one to get started. If I could ask a favor, if you could just give us a review on your podcasting service, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is that you use, just a tick or some stars. It will help just to show up on all the different algorithms and whatnot when people are searching for specifically Australian EV content, but EV content in general. Either way, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day today, and until next time, stay plugged in and stay charged. Ci vediamo.